It was a mass movement that saw one president toppled and another elected into office. But with so many people boycotting the vote, is this just the start of even more unrest? Because calls for the ruling elite to step aside show no signs of quieting down. I'm Imran Garda, and this year's newsmaker is Algeria. Abdelaziz Bouteflika led Algeria for 2 decades and was the country's longest-serving president. In 2013, he suffered a stroke, leaving him largely unable to walk or even talk. And from then on, he was rarely seen in public. So in February, when the 82-year-old announced he was seeking another term, Algerians had had enough. Cue the country's biggest protests in over a decade. We spoke to some of those who took part in those demonstrations and asked whether they felt insulted by Bouteflika's attempt to seek a 5th term.
I was in Algiers and I marched with the participants, with the protesters, and I marched, I observed them as a scholar, but I marched as an Algerian citizen as well. And I can tell you the general feeling was that we Algerians today, we feel ashamed we almost feel ashamed to say we are Algerian, because we are tired of being taken for granted, taken for half people, meaning and sous-peuple, and taken for half citizen, des sous-citoyens. It was the slap, it was the insult. Algerian, most of them find it outrageous and even beyond all reason to be governed by a man who hasn't been able to walk and to talk to them for the last 6 years. And more than that, it is an insult because he was the president who said that will bring change. There was this famous speech of Bouteflika when he said in Arabic, "Nahna tab jinanna," which means our generation is over and we need to let the young people govern and handle politics. And yet he claimed a 4th term, and here he is claiming a 5th term.
Lakhdar, why not let him run and lose? If presumably the elections are going to be free and fair, let him run, let him lose, and let the opposition take over.
Well, just to follow up on the previous question, I was talking to a politician this morning, and he told me Bouteflika wouldn't have given us a gift more than this, that he ran for a 5th term, he brought those who are on the edge,
right.
That was the last straw that broke it, a gift that pushed the Algerians in the streets as we saw it. And to answer your questions, why not let him run? Because Dalia was saying he promised the same thing in 2014. He said that he will.
But if it's free and fair, he'll lose if everybody's against him, right? Or the majority? It
might be free, but not fair.
Right.
You've got a set of laws, you've got a set of circumstances, conditions that make it not fair. I mean, you've got the constitution that was, and the electoral law that was amended recently that have put hurdles in front of incredible candidates. You've got the 10 years residency in Algeria, you've got the nationality of your spouse, of your wife, you've got the a set of hurdles that were put, obstacles that were put in front. So it might be free because now Algeria is in the spotlight, but it's never been a fair one.
Okay, so let's ask Andrew. Andrew, for as long as Bouteflika wants to run, will it always be rigged in his favor?
Rigged is not necessarily the term that I would use, but yes, there are certainly numerous factors that favor Bouteflika as long as he decides to present himself, which is part of why this mobilization has continued and why this promise of the national conference, if he's elected, is not going to be enough for many people.
Yeah. So, Dalia, when he talks about needing a national conference, dialogue for a transition, why are you against that?
No, I am not against it, but I think Algerian would be against it. Slogans were very clear when I marched with the student on February 26th and then with everybody else on March 1st. Slogans were very clear, and the demands for now are very clear. We do not want a 5th term. We do not want Bouteflika, neither his brothers, and we do not want all the people who has been within this system for 20 years. So a national dialogue is not going to solve the problem. What Algerians want is first to get rid of the Bouteflika clan and the supporters, and then have a free election. I would like to insist on one thing, which is the peaceful nature of this mobilization that has been really amazing to see. You know, I think Algerians gave a beautiful lesson of pacifism to the world. You know, when they marched, each time they met police barricades of the CRS, they chanted Silmiya, Silmiya, which means peaceful, peaceful. They also chanted Sha'b و police Khawa, Khawa, which means the people and the police are brothers. And they also chanted Yala police ma tdirish العيب, which means, oh police, do not shame yourself. I think I was surprised by how civilized they were and how experienced they were. Yeah. Algerians have the experience of the Black Decade and of the violence of the Black Decade. So they don't want to read it, if I may say. They don't want to replicate what happened in the 90s. And this is why they don't want violence. And I think it is very important to insist on that, because until now, the protest has been very peaceful, and hopefully they will remain peaceful. And I think if the protests remain peaceful, the mobilization will get broader because they will convince more people to join the movement. And if these protests remain peaceful but also the demand clear, we might see these protests mutate into something else, which is a successful social movement.
Right. Yeah. Protests have been peaceful, and unlike what we saw elsewhere in the region between 2011 and 2013, no major crackdown, thankfully. People are protesting. We're having this discussion about the politics and the optics, not about dead bodies, which is fantastic, and long may that continue. Lakhtar, a lot of people looking back at the Arab Spring, which Algeria was not considered a part of for the aforementioned reasons. People find a comparison between Bouteflika and Ben Ali of Tunisia. Is that accurate? Is that fair?
In terms of how the regime is set up, it's a bit different. You've got, as Dalia was saying, you've got a set of complex actor circles in the regime, whereas in Tunisia you've got a family rule. In fact, basically by the end of the Ben Ali's days. But looking at Algeria and the 90s. I think that the bloody decade, Algerians are beyond that. Not only the memory of the 90s, if you look to the average age of those who are in the streets now, in fact, they haven't lived that period. But as I said, over the last decade, the youth have been schooled into non-violent strategy. They've seen the fruits it's brought into the shale gas protests, where they put the regime under the spotlight. When you have the Financial Times writing over weeks pieces about Ain Saleh and how the protesters managed to put to at least delay the plans of the government into starting the. So there have been pedagogic work that have been giving its fruits in the non-violent strategy in Algeria that is underpinning that. Also those leaders, those who are in those movements, be it in the south, be it in the jobless committees in the south, be it in the shale gas, be it in the other parts in the north of Algeria, those are now on social media, and those who are leading and organizing the groups. If you look to the Facebook right now, you've got those ones, they are those who are leading the organization of this momentum, and also we are saying that segments of society are joining. Today we've got faculty, professors in Stif, in Bab Zouar, in Wargla, they've joined in. You've got defections into the regime.
Would you call it a revolution then?
It's building up. It's building up towards that. The scenarios, how this is going to play out, I see it. You've got 3 acts, 3 rounds, if you'd like. We've got right now, up to the election day, the regime right now is hoping to get to the election day, and then it will say that elections were held, and then they will have like you see the letter. They're like as if they are begging, let us just do the election, and they will just stay for 1 hour.
After weeks of demonstrations, it looked like people power prevailed when Abdelaziz Bouteflika announced he would not be running for another term. But was it the mass protest movement that forced his hand, or was it the French, as was claimed by this former captain in the Algerian Secret Service?
Which is, I mean, a coup against the constitution conducted by France. So that's it. It's a sit back. It's in fact somehow France is telling the Algerian people, I'm here to stay. I'm here for a long time. I mean, you cannot imagine that with the interest she's got, that she's going to just leave Algeria just like that. I mean, bearing in mind that since 1962, it did appear now that France is taking the Algerian cars for free. And they were doing so from 1962 to 2000.
Harun, allow me to interrupt you just for a second here. So you have all these people, hundreds of thousands of people take to the streets. They say, no fifth term for Bouteflika. We don't want you to run for a fifth term. And eventually he says, okay, I won't run for a fifth term, and I'm going to listen to you. People are celebrating on the streets. Aren't you giving an overly cynical interpretation of what might be true? But at least, I mean, perhaps there's something good on the surface here, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, not all people are they were, I mean, some people, they were fooled about what happened yesterday. But I mean, I can tell you that most of them, they're aware of what's going on. I mean, they know that what happened yesterday was just like a setup, because Bouteflika is not able, in fact, to give the interviews they've shown on the TV yesterday. They were fake videos. They were shown just to try and set up what they're trying to do and gain some time. While Bouteflika now is in a state of coma and unable, in fact, to do anything at all.
Okay, Lakhdar, do you share that cynical view of what happened?
Well, what the scenes we've seen last night in the streets of Algiers and other towns are a mix. There is a sort of orchestration of the celebration. There is some celebration, but there is also an orchestration of the celebrations if you do reverse engineering of what happened last night, is that the first pictures or footage showed on the pro-regime private channels, which tells a lot of the credibility of that. In addition to the youth online have now done some analysis of the footage and the videos, and there is a reason to believe that it's not quite clear that they're accurate or that up to date. So, yet there was some joyful feeling that the people, the protesters, they managed to make the regime do a reverse or U-turn on its decisions. That they feel that people power has achieved something, but they are still steadfast and they're in the streets. And we've seen it last night that they are still saying that we need to continue the engagement and stay in the streets, and there today in the universities, in many universities there in the streets, and there are strikes still ongoing.
Lakhdar, do you share Harun's view that the French are pulling the strings? We heard from the French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian welcoming the decision of Bouteflika not to stand for re-election, saying France expresses its hope that a new dynamic that can answer the deep aspirations of the Algerian people will rapidly take hold. Is there something deeper to be read there, that France has been pulling the strings?
Definitely, it would be simplistic to believe the contrary. I mean, the history, the strategic links between the two countries, I mean, what is at stake is huge. So the position of Algeria, its role in North Africa, it would be simplistic to believe that there was nothing there. La Mamra was in France just the day before, and we've seen it in Le Drian's answer to the Parliament's MP answer in the Assembly, General Assembly. So, yeah.
Okay, let's have a little listen to some of the people on the streets in hearing the news that Bouteflika would not stand for another term. Here's what some of them had to say.
We do not accept the extension that was announced. They said that elections would be coordinated. That is fine, as long as they are the scheduled elections. We simply do not accept this.
So let me then ask you, Haroon, for you and the protesters who are cynical and saying this is not enough, this seems like a setup, what then needs to be done in addition to Bouteflika saying, I don't want to run for a fifth term?
Sorry, I just want to correct the term. We're not cynical, we're just realistic. Because, as your honorary guest said, what is in stake here is huge. I mean, France cannot imagine its future without Algeria. And I can tell you something. There is a wake-up now within the population, either military or civilians. We all know that since 1962, we had like a fake independence. This is for sure. And people now, they want from France to get out of Algeria in once and for all. I mean, we would like, in fact, to share our resources, to conduct our politics like whatever we would like to do. So it is as simple as that, except that it won't happen just like that. Because, I mean, you need to know that, as I said before, Algeria for France is like blood. I mean, just imagine, as I said before, getting gas for free. It's huge. Plus, I mean, I'm not talking about only that, but I'm talking as well about the strategic position of Algeria, about the fact that Algeria doesn't want another Turkey at its doors. This is for sure. And as I said to some other analysts, I mean, France, she doesn't want now to have two Turkeys because they're fighting Turkey for its position and they're fighting now Algeria not to become another Turkey. And we need to know that in the world now, in the Islamic world, there are only two countries with huge potential, only Algeria and Turkey. So what is at stake now is huge.
In April, after 10 weeks of demonstrations, police arrested 5 businessmen as part of a crackdown on corruption aimed at Algeria's ruling elite. At the same time, calls for a boycott of an upcoming election grew. The 5 candidates in the running were all familiar faces and all part of ex-President Bouteflika's inner circle. Abbas Arwa, the co-founder of a political movement aimed at resisting the Algerian government, explains why he supported boycotting the elections.
The Algerian people is outside because he wants to recover his political will, and have a say in their future and in choosing and electing their representatives and their rulers. So the problem is not the principle of election. The universal suffrage must be the only way to choose people. The problem is, do we have the prerequisites, the conditions to have free and fair elections?
Aren't they creating the conditions? You're seeing not only Bouteflika now, you're seeing all these businessmen and politicians, the people around him who are benefiting, are now having their moment of reckoning. So aren't they creating those preconditions?
Yeah, but there is a confusion now because the chief of staff, who is really doing things, who is making political decisions, he said that Bouteflika and the people around him, he qualified them as a gang. But he's supporting people who are part of this gang. When you look at the former president of the Senate, who was nominated as president now, when you look at the prime minister, they are part of this gang. So it has no meaning to leave these kind of people organizing the elections. It's nonsense.
You were in exile for many years.
Sure.
Would you go back now?
No, because I don't have a passport to go.
I see.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not perfect, but it's moving in the right direction, isn't it? Wouldn't you trust the changes enough now to go back home?
Of course, it's moving in the right direction because of the popular pressure, because people are outside demonstrating peacefully in order to establish the rule of law and good governance, and this is the main objective. The aim is not to get rid of Bouteflika and leave the system as it is, as it was, as it has been since 1962.
Right.
The aim is to modernize the state, to have a civilian state that is ruled by a civilian elite, and to have a democratic control of the armed forces.
Right. The Algerian protesters also have a bit of a sense of humor. They're calling for all the Bs to go, or Ba in Arabic. So Bouteflika went, and now they're saying Badawi and Bouchareb and Ben Salah and so on. Is it easy to identify who the rotten apples are, given that the whole system was something that built up power for so long? Is it easy to say these are bad guys, these are good guys?
What is sure is that they are not bees. They are bees, but not bees. What they are producing, what they have produced in Algeria is an enormous chaos, enormous, massive, corruption. And that's why Algeria is now can be qualified as a rich country with poor people. I mean, this should be a condition in order to enter a genuine transition. One condition is that those people who were around Bouteflika and were ruling the country for 20 years go away and leave a new elite, credible people, trusted by the population to
But isn't that
run
the point? You don't need a new elite. They don't want an elite, the people. They
No,
want
when I'm, well, an elite,
right.
meaning a leadership
Right.
that is rooted, of course, rooted
Right.
in this protest, in this movement.
What institutions would you keep and what institutions would you throw out? Given that, as an outsider, Algeria is not Libya under Gaddafi, right? Okay, it's better than a lot of other places. So what would you keep and what would you say, okay, this is rubbish, we need to throw out?
We don't want to throw the institutions. We want to keep all the institutions.
But the people are saying they want the whole system to change.
What we want to change are the people who are leading these institutions. We want the resignation of the government that was designated by Bouteflika. We want a dissolution of the parliament and the Senate. We want really the starting of a genuine transition, which is not controlled by the military. We want the establishment of, when I say we want, there is a consensus. There are people who agree. The majority of people who represent this movement, the demonstrations, they agree that it's good to have a collegial presidency. We want to nominate a government, call it of national unity or national salvation, in order to run the day-to-day affairs of the state.
On December 12th, after 2 delayed votes, Algeria's former Prime Minister Abdelaziz Tebboune was announced the winner of presidential elections. But as a loyalist to the former administration, he wasn't exactly what the people had been asking for. So protesters were immediately back on the streets. Let's see what 2020 holds. Thanks for watching. We'll leave you now with scenes from Algeria's year of uprising.